Hello, everybody. This is Dr. David Jockers, and today we are talking about how to boost up dopamine for motivation and focus. And dopamine is a key neurotransmitter in our brain that really plays a big role with our pleasure and reward center. What does that mean? That means it helps with motivation because we know that we have a reward at the end. It helps us be able to focus and be able to get things done. And it helps us feel good throughout the day. When people are low in dopamine, oftentimes they are very distracted. They have kind of attention deficit type issues. They have trouble staying focused, completing tasks. Also, they can oftentimes feel very hopeless and almost like nothing pleases them, and they don't take any satisfaction in life. These are really common issues. Also, people who have abused drugs or been addicted to different things, whether it's sex or sugar, they're going to end up with poor dopamine receptor activity. So they can end up with these same issues with dopamine. In fact, really having issues and having a genetic mutations with the dopamine receptor can be a major risk factor for drug addiction, for sugar addiction, and addictions to many different things in life. And so we'll talk about what that looks like and really how to mitigate that. And even if you are struggling with those or if you struggled with it in the past, what to do about it. So let's jump into our topic here. If you don't know me, my name is Dr. David Jockers. I speak all around the world on a number of different health topics. And one of my favorites is really brain health, neurotransmitters, and having a supercharged brain. I speak in a lot of online summits on this topic. And, it's just really a passion of mine. And here's my beautiful family, my wife, Angel, and my boys, David and Joshua. And so let's get into the topic. So major symptoms of dopamine deficiency. Well, number one is lack of drive, motivation, and enthusiasm. So dopamine really plays a big role with getting us motivated, getting us energy. I mean, it plays a big role with morning energy. When we have energy to get going early in the day. And so if that's you, if you wake up and you just really struggle after you wake up to get going with anything, it's a sign that you may have low dopamine. Also, people low dopamine, again, they're depressed, bored, apathetic. Apathetic is an important one because that means that they don't really have a care about things. They just don't really care. They're just kind of sedated in a sense. And that's really not human in a sense. That's, really ultimately we were created to be passionate. We were created to be excited, to be enthusiastic about things. So apathy is a sign of dysfunction. Also, people with dopamine deficiency have incredible level of impulsiveness. In fact, there's a study done years ago with 23 individuals. And what they did was all these individuals had basically displayed high levels of impulsiveness. They offered them a certain amount of money, a smaller amount of money in the short term, or they can wait and then get a larger amount of money. And so all these individuals had originally chosen the smaller amount of money quickly because of this impulsive nature. They gave them a drug that blocked dopamine breakdown in their brain, and they all chose to wait and have the larger amount of money. And this is kind of the marshmallow effect. There was a study at Stanford that was done on children. And what they showed was that basically they give all the kids a marshmallow. And the examiner will give them a marshmallow and tell them, you can eat this marshmallow now, or you can wait about 15 minutes until I come back and I'll give you a second marshmallow if you haven't eaten this one. And they left the room. And what happened? About 60% of the kids ate the marshmallow, another 40% didn't. And then they tracked, the study was done in the 70s, and they tracked these kids throughout the course of their life, and they found that the kids who had the delayed gratification, they were able to wait on the marshmallow, displayed higher levels of academic performance, they had better relationships, whereas and they also made a lot more money, significantly more money, or 10 times the amount of money as the ones that were impulsive. And the kids that showed impulsiveness, they had higher levels of delinquency, they had higher levels of incarceration, where they were put in prison, higher levels of drug addiction, higher levels of divorce and relationship problems. They made a lot less money as a whole. And so basically the study was done to show, hey, you know what, if we have delayed gratification, that's a sign of discipline, and it's also a sign of really healthy brain function, and it's going to allow us to do more in our life. And so the major neurotransmitter involved with this delayed gratification is dopamine. And when we don't have that, we're going to end up with more impulsiveness. You can also see a lot of these other things, ADHD, a lot more cravings. In fact, oftentimes I'll use a supplement to help boost dopamine if somebody's having just uncontrollable sugar and carbohydrate cravings. Long term, when we are low in dopamine, it can result in Parkinson's. Okay, so Parkinson's disease is basically an inability to use dopamine, and it can create kind of these rigid movements, the hand tremors, because dopamine plays a role with motor movement in our body as well. So you can see all these different things: low sex drive, cold hands or feet, restless leg syndrome, believe it or not, has a lot to do with dopamine. A lot of people think, okay, that's a magnesium deficiency. Not necessarily, although that can definitely play a role. It's typically an issue with dopamine when you have this kind of restless leg. However, magnesium plays a role. In fact, magnesium, for anybody that's struggling with these conditions, can be amazing, because magnesium is one of the few things that helps sensitize dopamine receptors in the brain. So somebody that has drug addictions, ADHD, it's going to help the receptor sites, the dopamine receptors, be more sensitive to dopamine. And that is so critical, especially when we're looking at addictions. Because if you have a sugar, carbohydrate addiction, if you have a drug addiction, sex addiction, whatever it is, you are burning out. You are flooding your system with dopamine. And what happens, just like insulin with the pancreas, you overflood the system and the body starts to reduce the amount of receptors. It's like somebody screaming in your ear. You start to become habituated to it or sensitized to it. And so that's what ends up happening. And so these people basically have dopamine insensitivity, kind of like insulin resistance. They have dopamine resistance. Magnesium helps with insulin resistance for diabetes. It also helps with dopamine resistance. So it's really a key for this. Okay, most common causes of dopamine deficiency: adrenal fatigue, particularly phase 2, phase 3 adrenal fatigue. All our neurotransmitters go down. That plays a huge role. B6 deficiency, and I see this on lab work all the time. B6 is very, very critical for various neurotransmitter, the production of various neurotransmitters, and particularly with dopamine plays a very big role. Amino acids, particularly L-tyrosine and L-phenylalinine, play a big role. So if somebody has low stomach acid, leaky gut, poor digestion in general, they may end up with amino acid deficiencies, not absorbing those amino acids because you're not breaking it down effectively, and they can cause a dopamine deficiency. Leaky gut, low stomach acid, leaky gut play a big role with the amino acid deficiency. Or if somebody's on a very low protein diet, that can also play a role with that. Hypoglycemia, so if their blood sugar is all over the place, and particularly a hypoglycemic state where the blood sugar goes too low, that can cause a dopamine deficiency, causes inflammation in the brain, causes a lot of problems. Also, various heavy metals like lead, arsenic, and cadmium all play a big role with dopamine resistance in the brain. And then, as you can see, we talked about magnesium. So key nutrients we need: magnesium, zinc, iron. Iron obviously plays a big role with hemoglobin and oxygen, bringing oxygen to the brain. Vitamin C and D, both very, very key with this process. And niacin, vitamin B3 plays a very big role with this as well. So leaky gut, probably a main cause of dopamine deficiency related to leaky gut. And so what is leaky gut? Basically, in our intestinal system, you can see this one cell wall down here near the bottom, and they're all held in by these little tight junctions. Okay, and it's kind of like almost like a baseball glove, or think about it like a zipper. And so what happens basically when we have inflammation in our gut, or if we have certain molecules, certain proteins that are activated, then it will cause basically the zipper to be loosened up, to be released, to unzip in a sense. And it opens up the junction, and now protein molecules can get into the bloodstream and cause inflammation in our body. So poor digestion is a key role with this. So low hydrochloric acid and enzymes, blood sugar issues like we talked about there with hypoglycemia, antibiotics, whether it's prescription antibiotics or dietary antibiotics, which we might get from consuming commercial raised animal products. So like, for example, non-organic dairy loaded with antibiotics, If we get commercial raised meat at a restaurant or in our house, it's going to be loaded with antibiotics that are going to damage our gut. Female hormones, so based on pregnancy, menopause, can definitely contribute to this. Environmental toxins play a big role. BPA, phthalates, organopollutants, these types of things are real damaging to the gut. Food allergies, things like gluten or maybe dairy allergies or corn or soy. Some of these common food sensitivities or food allergies cause inflammation in the gut. And then chronic stress plays a big role. When our stress hormones go down because we have been overwhelmed by stress, now that opens the junction in our gut, causes problems. So we got to protect against this. And, there's a big player with gut problems causing brain problems. In fact, in functional medicine, we say that a leaky gut equals a leaky brain. And you can see based on the fact that when the gut is damaged, and we produce so many neurotransmitters, way more neurotransmitters in our gut than in our brain. And there's a constant communication between the gut and the brain. And there's a lot of bad bacteria, okay, that when the gut is damaged, they're going to release waste products, okay, like yeast release gliotoxins, which damage the brain, and acetaldehyde. You have things like E. coli, which release lipopolysaccharides that damage the brain. You have C. difficile or Clostridia species, which release a number of different toxins that affect the brain. And all of these types of things, these types of microbial overgrowths are related to issues like ADHD and autism in kids, as well as neurodegenerative disorders and autoimmune disorders that affect the brain later in life. So we got to take good care of our gut. This is just a little slide showing really some of the key processes involved with producing adequate dopamine. So you can see over on the far left, phenylalanine, this amino acid, needs B6 and it produces PEAs. And PEAs naturally boost endorphins, which make us feel really good. So if somebody's deficient in phenylalanine or B6, they can end up with an endorphin deficiency and feel really, really bad. And that can, in a sense, be very similar to a dopamine deficiency. And oftentimes they go hand in hand. In fact, when I'm working with people with these kind of issues, usually I'll try to boost their endorphins through doing things like dl-phenylalinine as well as vitamin B6 to produce PEAs and to go through the process to produce dopamine. So you can see that there's an enzyme, phenylalanine hydroxylase, which helps convert phenylalanine into tyrosine, which is another amino acid that we also get from our diet as well. So you can also start this process with tyrosine, which needs B6 to turn into L-DOPA, okay, which is also a medication that's given to people with Parkinson's. And one of the issues with L-DOPA medication is it actually depletes B6. I see a lot of people, they just take L-DOPA and they get short-term results, but long-term, they're actually worse because they wipe out their B6. So their ability to take the pharmaceutical L-DOPA or the natural L-DOPA and turn it into dopamine goes down because they're so deficient in vitamin B6. And I see this very often, low vitamin B6, and I'll show you the test that I look for with that. But anyways, that turns into dopamine. Now you need vitamin C, okay? And also we all have these monoamine oxidase, basically compounds, enzymes in our brain, and they help to break down neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, things like that. Some people will have a genetic SNP, SNP, with the MAO, which is the monoamine oxidase protein. And what happens, then they get poor breakdown of dopamine. And that's important as well, because they can have, when you have too much dopamine for too long, you'll end up with downregulated dopamine receptors, which can cause a major problem. So anyways, you need adequate vitamin C to go through this process to take dopamine into norepinephrine, which is important. That's adrenaline. And then you also need SAMe and cortisol, which is stress hormone, in order to take norepinephrine into another form of stress hormone called epinephrine. So you can see this whole process. It's dependent on key nutrients. Now, the graph on the bottom shows how a certain type of bacterium called Clostridium difficile or Clostridia actually affects the breakdown into dopamine. And so you can see how it'll affect phenylalanine breakdown, and it will produce these metabolites called 4-cresol and HPHPA, which then block dopamine beta hydroxylase. And dopamine beta hydroxylase is the key enzyme necessary to take dopamine and turn it into norepinephrine, right? That adrenaline that we talked about. And so these two markers at the very bottom there, homovinylic acid, HVA, and vinylomandelic acid, VMA, we can look at that on a lab test. We can look at those end metabolites, and we can see if HVA is real high, VMA is low, then we know that dopamine beta hydroxylase enzyme is being blocked, and it is either going to be due to Clostridium overall, C. difficile, or Clostridia overgrowth, or could be due to a vitamin C or a copper deficiency. Okay, so that's what I look at with those. Okay, here's the test I look at. And so you can see all these kind of strange sounding things, but basically at the top there, I'm looking at oxalic acid metabolism to see if this person is able to metabolize oxalates. As we go lower, glycolytic cycle and mitochondrial markers, we're looking at how well the body's utilizing sugar as well as fatty acids for energy, how well the carnitine levels are, the coenzyme Q10, all the mitochondrial substrates that the body needs. We're looking at that on that test. Also, we're looking at amino acid uptake. We're also looking at these neurotransmitters. So you can see phenylalanine and tyrosine metabolites, the HVA and the VMA. So you can see this person, high HVA, low VMA, or really optimal VMA, I guess you could say. So is there a chance this person may have a C. difficile or a vitamin overgrowth or a vitamin C deficiency? There is a chance, and this test, I'm not showing all the pages, but actually would look at that so I can see if that is the case. So this is always a test I'm looking for when somebody has a brain issue. It's called the organic acid test. You can find it on my website, drjockers.com, the organic acid test. So we look at all of these types of things. Okay, let's talk about strategies to raise dopamine. Well, here are 7 strategies that you want to start applying right away. And these are really good for all of us. Number 1, adapt to stress better. So take time to do deep breathing. That's a really important one. Journal. So getting your thoughts down on paper can be helpful. Listening to scripture and worship music or classical music can be amazing. So whether it's speaking scriptural verses over yourself or something inspiring over yourself can be so powerful. So constantly, you got to remember that what you feed your body is important, but also what you feed your mind. So make sure that your mind is getting really pure food, pure nutrition in the form of biblical scriptures or inspiring messages, worship music or classical music, something really good for your brain. Anti-inflammatory diet. So we want to make sure our diet is low in sugar, high in really good healthy fats like coconut, avocados, grass-fed butter or ghee, and olives and olive oil. We want lots of antioxidants, so lots of herbs, as well as non-starchy vegetables, low glycemic fruit, all really good for the body. Clean protein, so grass-fed or organic pasture-raised protein, as well as fermented foods and healthy nuts and seeds and low glycemic sweeteners like monk fruit and stevia. All these things are great, and you guys probably have heard many of my videos on diet, on nutrition, so be sure to listen to those for more information on that. Sleep better. Getting to sleep at an early time. That's so important. So I recommend it for every hour before midnight is equivalent to 3 hours of healing and regeneration in your brain after midnight. So what does that mean? That means that get to bed before midnight for sure. I recommend being in bed by 10 so you get 2 really high quality hours of sleep. You start to really boost up that human growth hormone, get better regeneration in your brain, your glymphatic system, or what we know as your lymphatic system of the brain, called the glymphatic system, which helps to recycle neurotransmitters, works so much better when we're getting good sleep and going to sleep early. Our ancestors went to bed at an early time and woke up at dawn. And this is really what's best for our circadian rhythms. It's best for our body physiology. You want to do that to help raise up your dopamine and help improve dopamine signaling. We want to improve the microbiome. We talked about C. difficile or Clostridia species in general. We talked about yeast secreting gliotoxin and acetaldehyde that affect the brain. We also talked about E. coli and other gram-negative bacteria that produce lipopolysaccharides or LPS that damage the brain. So we've got to improve the microbiome. So fermented foods, bone broth, consuming less solid food meals. So doing soups, smoothies, Things like that can really help the microbiome. Consuming a lot of fiber, lots and lots of herbs. Herbs are one of the best things. These carminatives, one of the best things for regulating the gut microbiome. So doing all those things, setting good goals, right? Setting goals and going after them. Setting realistic goals that you can accomplish, and setting up a path to accomplish those goals. There's one of those things, when you accomplish goals, it really boosts up dopamine. You feel good about yourself. You get that reward. It's awesome. So you want to do that. Small tasks. So doing small tasks throughout the day, like saying, you know what, I'm going to write 2 thank you cards today. Something really, really small that's very realistic. Okay. And ideally doing tasks to help other people. Serving other people can help boost up dopamine, reduce stress in your body. So setting small tasks and enjoying the victory of that. A lot of times we set these really humongous tasks, and we, in a sense, we don't enjoy the small things that we're doing every day, that the small goals and the small accomplishments. And so that's really the key here, is setting small tasks and enjoying the accomplishment. Okay, many of us have done that before. I know for myself, when I'm feeling tired during the day, sometimes I'll just do something small and allow myself to feel really good about that. And then regular exercise, which is so key for circulation, bringing more oxygen into the brain. We talked about oxygen being so important for dopamine. Regular exercise, really good for stimulating something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor. And that BDNF is going to help with dopamine sensitivity in the brain. So really powerful there. Okay, again, we talked about diet, so smoothies, doing low carbohydrate sort of diet. I'm a big fan of a ketogenic diet, or a cyclical ketogenic diet, where you can cycle out once a week and cycle back in. So doing really, really good foods. And you can see this food pyramid, good fats at the bottom, lots of antioxidants. Just above that, clean protein, nuts and seeds, fermented foods, and natural sweeteners in moderation. That's really the kind of diet that's going to help improve dopamine levels. It's going to help your overall brain to be able to function better, help your motivation, your focus, and your drive. How about herbs? Okay, some great herbs. In particular, the best ones I've found for boosting dopamine are rhodiola and cordyceps. But some of these other ones are great. Ginseng, in general, I mean, adaptogenic herbs, and that's what all of these are. They help our body adapt to stress. So what does that mean? These are really intelligent herbs that sense what's going on in our body, right? So they basically have compounds called terpenes that give our body a level of intelligence on what's going on in the environment and help with the adaptability to the environment. So ashwagandha is really, really good for sleep and also for anxiety. It's really, really good for that. Ginseng is good for mood and for memory. Rhodiola is very, very good for mood, right? So like depression, something like that. Very, very good for energy. So mood and energy, we want to think about that. Holy basil, really good for immune system, as well as blood sugar and overall stress. When you feel really, really stressed and fatigued, it's really good for that. Cordyceps, really good for energy, for strength, actually, so like athletic performance. Okay, really good for that. Really good for the liver and the immune system. Reishi mushroom, really good for the immune system. Also good for insomnia and for blood pressure regulation. So a lot of people with adrenal fatigue have low blood pressure. Reishi mushroom is really good for that. So these types of herbs we want to be using on a regular basis. And we have them in our Adapt Strong. So when I do a questionnaire and I find that people have low dopamine, this is what we recommend, is the Adapt Strong. It's got rhodiola, it's got cordyceps, it's got ginseng in it. It also has vitamin B5 and vitamin B6. B5 is key for stress hormone production, like cortisol production, which we need. And B6 is really important, obviously. We talked about that for conversion of the amino acids, phenylalanine as well as tyrosine, into dopamine. So it's got all of that in there. Really good for energy and mood. Good for your immune system. Really good for strength and endurance. So for athletic performance. Really good for all that. And just overall adapting to stress. Magnesium, again, I talked about that. Magnesium, absolutely you want to be doing. It's going to help with overall receptor activity, dopamine receptor activity. It's going to help you sleep better. It's going to help you adapt to stress better, be more relaxed, just have better overall coordination of your neurotransmitters. You know, your neurotransmitters, it's so important to have the right amount at the right time, and also to flush them out at the right time. Magnesium really helps the brain with that process. So it helps with overall coordination of these neurotransmitters. And that's what's powerful behind it. And so magnesium, if you want to perform better, have more motivation and focus, definitely want to do magnesium. The kind I recommend is Brain Calm Magnesium. The reason why is that this is a magnesium L-threonate form. And magnesium L-threonate is the only form that has been clinically tested to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier and actually be able to impact neurotransmitters, also to improve the overall amount of synapses, right? These little gaps between neurons that play a huge role with our mental flexibility, with our emotional control, play a huge role with all of that. It's also really good for stress management, so keeping us relaxed, really good for helping support good, healthy bowel movements, sleep quality, healthy mood. So this is something I consume every day. I put a vast majority of my clients on it. My wife absolutely loves it. It's a Brain Calm Magnesium. It's flavored with stevia, and it's got a kind of like a little bit of a fruit punch, pink fruit punch type flavor to it. It's really, really good and so powerful for the body. Okay, and then finally, this one I don't use as often, but I will use it, and it's called Dopamine Plus. And Dopamine Plus is a dl-phenylalinine, also a tyrosine in there, a couple other compounds in this supplement as well, and very, very powerful for helping reduce sugar cravings and overeating. So when people are really low in dopamine, like they've had major addictions and they just feel hopeless, they have really low energy, all those low dopamine symptoms, I get them started on Dopamine Plus, and they notice immediate mental energy, mental clarity, less distractibility, better sex drive, better cravings and overeating. It can also help reduce pain, restless legs, right? Different things like that. So anyways, that's the Dopamine Plus. So typically, if somebody's got more of a mild dopamine deficiency, then we'll start them out with the Adapt Strong and the Brain Calm Magnesium. And then if it's more moderate to high level of dopamine deficiency based on the questionnaire and based on what we're seeing with lab testing, then we get them started with the Dopamine Plus, and we do see great results, okay? And this is really good. This supplement is awesome for sugar cravings, right? When people have a lot of sugar cravings, we start to get them on a lower sugar diet, yet they're still craving things all the time. We have them take 3 of these Dopamine Plus about 15 minutes before each meal, and they see big changes with it. So it works really good. Okay, and then finally, if you're more interested in really doing a full brain program, you want a nutrition plan, exercises to do, advanced strategies, you want to go through my neurotransmitter quest and my quiz, and my neurotransmitter program, I have this called the Super Brain Program, okay, and you can find that on drjockers.com. This is a program with a ton of different videos. I think we've got about 50 different video instruction, showing different exercises, recipes, as well as advanced steps and principles to apply. We have a meal plan, a neurotransmitter training guide. We have got a manual for the program, a recipe book, quick start guide, a quick start snack guide, all the best snacks for a healthy brain. I mean, really everything you need as like almost like a college course to impact your brain. And so this is equivalent to about 30 hours of my time. If you hired me for 30 hours, you'd be paying somewhere between $12,000 to $15,000 for 30 hours of my time. Instead, this is only $97, and you can buy it on our website, drjockers.com. Just go to programs, and you'll find the Super Brain Program. Just $97 because I'm able to do it all in a format that doesn't take more of my time. It's able to help a lot of people, and you're able to go through this at your own pace. So it's not like you just need to slam the information down. You could take a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. You could take 3 years to go through this program and really understand the material and apply it and improve your brain. So if that's you, if you're out there and you want that, definitely take advantage of it. It's drjockers.com. Look at the programs header, and you will find the Super Brain Program. So I hope you guys really enjoyed today's workshop, today's demonstration here, this presentation, and we look forward to seeing you on a future presentation. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.